All right, let's jump right in. We're going to break down this really fascinating study that asks a question that seems simple but has a surprisingly deep answer. When you're trying to learn a new language, do visuals, pictures and videos, actually help you understand what you're hearing? You know that feeling, right? You're sitting there, taking a language test, listening to some pre-recorded audio, and it just feels completely artificial. It's nothing like how people actually talk. Well, that feeling of frustration, that disconnect, that's exactly where this whole story starts. So for a long time now, researchers have been saying that audio-only listening tests just aren't realistic. I mean, in real life, you see people when they talk. So the obvious fix is to just add video, right? Well, it's not that simple. When they tried it, the results were all over the place. Sometimes video helped, sometimes it did nothing, and sometimes it actually made things worse. It was a real puzzle. And this really lays out the problem they were facing. On one side, you have the old-school audio tests. Yeah, they're unnatural, but they're easy to make, and they test one very specific skill, pure listening. On the other side, you've got video tests. They feel more real, but now you're testing a mix of skills. And with those inconsistent results, nobody was sure if they were actually a better way to test someone. This is where the study we're digging into today comes in with a really smart idea. The researchers basically said, hold on a second, what if we're asking the wrong question? Maybe it's not about using video, but how we use it. What if the specific kind of video you show is what makes all the difference? And that leads us to the absolute core idea of this entire experiment, this critical difference between two types of video. The researchers called them content and context videos. And trust me, understanding this distinction changes everything. Okay, so first up, you've got context videos. Think of these as just setting the scene. You see the person talking, their facial expressions, their hands moving, the room they're in. These videos show you who is talking and where they are, but they don't really show you anything about the topic they're discussing. And then you have content videos. These are totally different. These visuals are directly tied to what's being said. So if the speaker is talking about the economy, you actually see a graph pop up. If they're explaining biology, you see a diagram of a cell. These videos show you exactly what the person is talking about. This analogy is just perfect. A context video, that's like watching a news anchor sitting at a desk, just reading the news to you. But a content video, that's like the weather forecaster standing in front of the map, pointing to the hurricane as they explain where it's headed. You see, one just shows you the speaker, the other shows you the subject. Okay, so the researchers had this great hypothesis that content visuals are way more helpful than context visuals. But how do you prove it? You can't just ask people. You need solid objective proof. And to get it, they used some seriously cool technology. The way they set this up was really thorough. They had 71 students take a bunch of listening tests. Some are audio only, some had those context videos, and some had the content videos. But here's the brilliant part. While they watched the videos, a special device called an eye tracker was recording exactly where their eyes were looking, millisecond by millisecond. Then they even got to watch a replay of their own eye movements and explain what they were thinking. This quote from Hend Naif, the lead researcher, really sums it up. Eye tracking takes all the guesswork out of the equation. It's like having a direct window into someone's brain while they're learning. Instead of asking, so was that helpful? The researchers could literally see what students were focusing on, what they were ignoring, and for how long. So after all that work, the different tests, the high-tech eye tracking, all the interviews, what was the final verdict? What did the cold, hard data actually have to say? Well, first off, the results were a huge win for video in general. The numbers were clear. Students did way better on tests that had any kind of video compared to the plain old audio-only ones. So, okay, we can confirm, visuals do help. But that's just scratching the surface. And that brings us to the real cliffhanger, the big question. If any video is better than no video, does the type of video make a difference? Did it matter whether students saw a context video or a content video? And boom! Here it is, the main event. The results were honestly pretty dramatic. The context videos, they gave a decent boost to the scores. But the content videos, they sent scores through the roof. Students who saw visuals that actually illustrated the topic just blew every other group out of the water. This was the real breakthrough. So why? Why such a huge difference? I mean, the really amazing part of this whole thing isn't just that the scores were higher. It's understanding the reason why. And that's where the eye tracking data became the smoking gun. It showed exactly what was going on in the students' heads. So when students were watching the context videos, the ones with just the person talking, their eyes were, well, they were all over the place. The data showed their gaze just wandering around the screen, from the speaker's face to the bookshelf in the background, then back to their face. Their attention was totally scattered. But, and this is so cool, with the content videos, everything snapped into focus. As soon as a graph or a diagram appeared that was relevant to what was being said, the students' eyes locked right onto it. The data showed these long, intense gazes on the exact information they needed to understand the concept. They weren't just passively looking, they were actively thinking. And that brings us to the real takeaway here, because this isn't just some interesting fact about language tests. No, these findings have huge implications for how we design our learning materials, how teachers teach, and honestly, how all of us can learn more effectively. So what does this all mean for us in the real world? Well, if you're designing a test, the message is loud and clear. Use visuals that explain the material, not just ones that show who's talking. If you're a teacher, it's a huge reminder that showing a tough concept is so much more powerful than just talking about it. And for every one of us trying to learn something new, it means we should go out of our way to find those diagrams and illustrations that make tricky ideas click. So I guess the bottom line is this. We've got to stop thinking about visuals as just pretty decorations to liven up a presentation. That's not what they're for. When they're used right, visuals aren't just supporting the lesson, they are the lesson. They're a core part of the explanation itself, helping our brains build connections that sound alone just can't make. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. We've all heard that old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. But after looking at this research, you have to ask yourself, for someone who's really struggling to grasp a new language, what is the right picture worth? The one that makes it all make sense? I'd say it might just be priceless.